Welcome to the Versa Business Tips Podcast. I'm your host, founder, and CEO of Versa Business Systems, Shaheen Mazloom. We're here with Nolan Bradbury today, CEO of Bradford Accounting and Advisory, 20 years helping business owners on the accounting side of the business, but also on the family side of the business. So thanks for joining us today, Nolan. I appreciate you hopping on with us.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure, man. So for those out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your company does.
Yeah, so CPA by trade, although I would say that's about as far away from what I actually do as reality goes. So I don't prepare tax returns. Even my parents still ask me that. So don't do taxes, but what I do is I help founders, business owners utilize accounting, which is often an under access part of their business to drive better profitability, drive better cash flow, and help them utilize that to make their business run better. And then ultimately, as you mentioned on the family side, we help them transition the benefit that they receive in the business into running the family more effectively from a financial standpoint. So one of the things I shared with you when we were talking in the green room, if you will, is that most people didn't start out to run a business. They started out to find a way to have a better personal life. And so we want to make sure that the end result is we're actually achieving those goals that the family wants, not just some business-based goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think time and time again, most business owners end up just working a business, right?
Yep. They're an employee for themselves.
Yeah. You don't start a business to, you might as well get a job, right? Like less headache, less stress. Like if you're just working the business, or letting the business work you, right?
Absolutely.
I would say most people get to a realization of that's what they're doing at some point in their business.
Yep.
And then, once they come to that realization, then they can start changing things and moving in the right direction. So, I'm a sales guy through and through.
Yep.
I look at sales, KPIs, cost per lead, how much we're bringing in per deal, things like that. How much more in depth do you need to be on the accounting side to really figure out what's working, what's not, and what to scale on? Or does it just come to those metrics at the end of the day, right? Those same KPIs.
Yeah, so great question. First off, I think it's great that it focuses on KPIs. Too often business owners go, show me the P&L.
Yeah.
And it's like that's kind of just geography. You're missing some of the key components if that's all you're looking at.
Right.
So from a KPI perspective, I think what's important is a little bit upstream from what you're talking about. So how did we get to those metrics? So one thing is if you're offering multiple products, which of those is the one that's most profitable, which requires the least amount of resources to derive. It's not uncommon when we work with businesses to find that the item or the service or the product that they're putting the most resource into, time and money, is actually the least profitable or the most time consuming, right? And that so you can have KPIs in terms of what your sales are, but if that's not the right allocation of your resources, then there's a missing piece upstream, right? And you're not being as efficient as possible. So I think a lot of it is understanding and having the right systems and processes in place to be able to analyze how am I actually deploying what I have? I mean, you have a finite amount of resources, right? That you got to make sure that you're putting it in the right place.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think data is probably the most important piece of a business, right? Like, when you first start a business, you're just focused on getting deals, getting clients, getting deals, getting clients, right? Like, can I make this work? Can I stay above water? Right. And then you get to a point where, okay, this is working. We're getting some clients. We're getting some deals done. We're making some money. We're expanding a little bit. And I think oftentimes we don't get organized fast enough. I know I was guilty of it myself. I mean, we've been in business now for 7 years with this business. I started my first business when I was 7 years old, right? We were the most unorganized thing there is. But we had a ton of repeat clients. Like, I mean, we never lost a client. Probably because we were the coolest kids on the block, but, now it's, it gets to a point where you just need to be more organized. And I think businesses really struggle with that because they don't have the right systems in place, right? Like, having a CRM, having, systems that will track the minutes used and the time spent and the, those different metrics. So you can then look at, okay, well, what did this cost you? And breaking down the cost for each and everything that goes into the sale or the conversion of, of a lead or whatever it may be. So the type of businesses that you're generally working with, like mom and pop shops, 4 to 5 employees, or like generally what kind of companies are you working with?
Yeah, so we primarily work with founders. So usually first generation would mean they started the business,
Right.
and they usually come to us at I would say one of three different places from a revenue perspective. So what we talked to, and I'll give this a little bit of background, and I'll explain why this is. So there's this idea of the rule in 3 and 10, which if you're not familiar with it, basically what it says is as you scale in a business in increments of 1 to 3, 3 to 10, 10 to 30, 30 to 100, not up, right? And that
Yep.
could be revenue, could be people, whatever it is, that as you approach the next milestone, right? So if you're going from 3 to 10, 10, that the things that got you to 3 are going to be the things that prevent you from getting to 10. They break. And so here's what ends up happening is people come to us because maybe they're doing 700,000 a year. Maybe they're doing 2.4 million a year. Maybe they're doing 8 million a year, but they can't quite get to that next threshold, right? They keep bumping up against the ceiling.
Right.
And more times than not, the issue, while it's simple and it's not easy, but the simple issue is that they are behaving like a $2.4 million business, not a $3 million business, right? So
Right.
part of what you described is that they are driving the business too much on intuition, not enough on data. Or it's the data that got them to this point, not the data that will get them to the next point. Or
Right.
have you bought back the time that you need in the right places to get you to the next place? So as silly as it sounds, it's about reshaping the company to be the thing that it can grow into.
Right.
Otherwise, the reality is that the reason you can't get past the point you're at is because you have unintentionally put a cap on what that business can do because it no longer can be more than what it is. That, like, I know that
Right.
sounds very sort of cerebral, but that is the reality of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally get that. And I think if any business that's made it past 5 years goes back and looks at, their thresholds when they went from that 5 to 10 or 10 to 20 or whatever it was, you can see that you had to make some pretty significant changes
Yeah.
in order to get to that next level, right? Like you can't run the same. It's just like insanity, right? Like you do the same thing over and over expecting different results. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, I was talking to a client yesterday, or I guess we had their monthly sort of executive management meeting where I was sitting in on it, and their goal is to get to 10 million a year in revenue, and right now they're hovering around 8. And
Mhm.
what I had to explain to them was, you got to get to 1.2 million a month, or you got to peel back. You're
Yeah.
going to die a slow bleed at this place you're at right now because you're not small enough to operate efficiently at the size you are, but you're not big enough to generate enough revenue from the size team that you are. And so you're caught in this no man's land. And so you either got to get upstream real quick or you got to peel back and get a little bit smaller. But being where you're at is actually going to be the death of you. And
Right.
that's a weird thing for people to think about, that like, oh, like I got this place and that's not the place I need to be. It's like there are these places in the growth of a business and the scaling of business where if you stay there too long, that is the death of the business.
Yeah. 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 No, I can totally see that. I mean, it if anything, it becomes, I don't know what the word is, demotivating, right? Like
Sure.
when you're staying stagnant at that same place, you've got the same number of employees, you're doing the same amount of revenue, you're doing the same thing. It becomes monotonous. Every day is the same, right? And so your company comes in and takes a look at the numbers, right? You guys are focused more on the numbers side of things, right? Like what you're
Yeah.
spending on marketing, what you're spending on employees, what's going, how much does it cost you for this product, that product, whatever, and figuring out where to dial back on and where to increase at. Is
Yeah.
that
You know, what's
kind
funny
of the
is that,
gist of it?
well, so it's funny you say that because I think what you just said is what a lot of people think, and
Mm.
I think there is a element of that. But I don't come in and tell you how you should spend your money. Believe it or not, like I'm not going to come to you and say like you need to not spend here.
Right.
What we are going to do though is we're going to work together to figure out. It's like the 10-80-10 rule, which is you're going to come to me and tell me what you need to accomplish. I'm going to help you answer that question in the middle 80. And then we're going to come back and you have a decision to make, and that is preference based. So
Right.
it isn't that you need to cut back on marketing or cut back here. It's that if you don't do one of these things, this is going to be the outcome. How do you want to
Right.
solve that problem? Right.
Right.
And I think what we sometimes forget is that that is actually a preference. That is a choice that you're making, and there isn't a wrong answer. It's what is in most alignment with what you want to do and who you are. And
Right.
that's the piece that most business owners don't get, is they're like, well, tell me what the answer is. And the answer is, I can't tell you what the answer is. It's,
Right.
what is your risk tolerance? How much do you want to spend? Like, what are you willing to do versus not do,
Right.
to get that answer? So what we do is actually we help break down the myth of, like, look, I get this. Most people don't like accounting. The fact that people are listening to me right now as an accountant is kind of amazing in the first place, because when you ask business owners what do they like the least about running a business, it's finance and accounting.
A
That is the
hundred
number one
percent.
answer, right? Like,
I
it's
went
the
to
least
college
enjoyable.
for 2 years, and the only class I just could not stand was accounting.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? If we understand that, the thing about human beings is that we avoid things we don't like. So
Oh
if I
yeah,
don't like accounting
100%.
and I know that I
But
don't like
that's
to do
the
things I
thing that
don't
we
like,
got to focus on.
so when you run a business, if you're falling into this mindset, right, or this trap, it means that you're avoiding a really critical part of your business.
Yeah,
So what we do
100%.
is we solve why it is you don't like accounting first. Because it's like, here's the thing. If you want to go work out and you want to get in better shape, what is the workout that's going to work best for you? The one you're going to do.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter. Like, I could give you the best routine, but if
Right.
you're not willing to do it, then it does
Yep.
not matter.
It doesn't
Right? So
matter.
we
Yep.
have to build an ecosystem for you that, like, actually brings you into the conversation, and that you're
Yeah.
willing to do it. Otherwise,
100%.
anything other than that, it's going to be a waste of your money. So we
Yep.
solve that first, then we actually address the internal issues of the company, and then what we find is that the ownership and management starts to lean in more, because they
Love
start
it.
to see we've designed a system that they don't hate. As silly
Right.
as that sounds, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
and so they're
100%.
like, what used to be this pain point now becomes something they're looking forward to understand,
Right.
like, what is going on? How do I tackle this?
Right.
And that's where the company tends to take off, because they
Yeah.
peeled away the things that were holding them back.
Yeah. Yeah. No, very cool, man. So, how often than not, when you go into a business and you're like, okay, we're gonna take a look at everything and see what's going on here, how often are they just completely disorganized and you're fighting tooth and nail just to get the information that you need? Or are you finding that it's pretty simple? Like, I guess I'm trying to say, like, if they don't have an organized CRM or QuickBooks, or
Yep.
they're just doing their P&Ls once a year, and they're not fine tuning every type of KPI.
Yeah.
How difficult is it, and how long is that process going to take if they're not organized?
Yeah. So I smirked, because the answer is actually relatively, it's a matter of how much the owner wants to fix it.
Right.
Like it like it is that simple. Like, if you
Yeah.
came to me and you said, Nolan, fix this in a week, more often than not, I could probably fix it for you in a week, if you give me what I need
Right.
and you don't get in the way. Now,
Right.
here's the problem, right? Is that we tend to not get out of our own way. And so as we work through this, the thing that often slows down the improvement is our own sort of like limiting thoughts, our own factors, our inability to see that, oh, if I carve out this thing I don't need to spend time on, but focus here, that will actually reap much better benefits and solve this problem, and it goes away, right? So
Right.
it's like, how much are you willing to sort of help future you versus current you, right?
Right.
And so some of that is just a function of, I mean, there are times where we work with clients and the answer is we can't help them,
Right.
unfortunately, because they are unwilling to do the things necessary to fix the problem. Now, that doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean their business is going to fail. It just means that to get out of where they're at, they are not currently willing to do the work. Right? So
So,
there,
and do you run into that quite a bit?
I wouldn't say quite a bit, but I think it comes down to how bad is the pain you're experiencing.
Right. Okay.
Right? So what we
So
find is,
what? They're just deciding we're just going to stay where we're at, and
so it's an unintentional choice, right? I
okay.
don't I don't think that they ever sit there and go, I don't want to do this. I think
Right.
what happens, right, is that they sit there and they choose inaction. They choose not to do something, and because
Right.
they choose not to do something, the next thing doesn't get done, and there's a
Right.
trickle down effect, right? And so
Love
then
it.
what ends up happening is we go a couple months, we don't make progress, and I have to come back to them and say, well, we're going to no longer be a client, because I can't fulfill my obligation, and I'm not going to sit here and take your money for something that doesn't make sense, right? Like, this is
Right.
like, I'm a fiduciary to some extent for you, and this is a bad investment. Like meaning that
Right.
you're flushing money away on something you're not utilizing. Does it
Yeah.
happen often? No, no, it
Right.
doesn't.
Yeah, but I
Um,
mean, it's just like those people that go to like a business conference, right? You learn
yes,
all this stuff at this
yes,
marketing mastermind or whatever, and then you go home and you don't utilize any of it. You don't do anything. You
yeah,
don't take any action, or you
exactly,
read that book that you're like, oh man, I really need to learn how to lead better. And you read those books on leadership, and then you don't change. You don't do
exactly.
anything. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
I feel like it happens more
and
times than
and I
not.
don't mean to imply it's all the client or the company's fault, right?
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not. I don't want to sit here and like cast stones. It's more
Oh,
of
for
like
sure.
typically where we see progress not made, it isn't necessarily because of their systems or their processes, because all that can be fixed. It
Mm,
is usually a function of not prioritizing the fix for those things.
right.
And that's again, that's the distinction between that is a very simple and obvious thing. It is not easy all the time, right? Like
Right.
and so like I don't mean to simple like make it sound like, oh, just do it. Like that's not the issue, right? It's more of that sometimes it's really hard for us to see what is right in front of us,
Right.
and the influence that we're having into our own, I don't want to say failure, but like we are oftentimes the reason we don't succeed. It's not
Right.
external things. It's usually our own reasons that we put out there.
Right.
We say, I can't do this, or we define ourselves as something that isn't what we want. Well, how are you supposed to be something when you think you're not that thing?
Yeah.
Like as silly, it's like there is this sort of like it's a bit of manifestation on its own, right? Which is if you can't see yourself as being the thing, you're never going to be the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely get that. So, let me ask you something that I'm sure everybody's probably wondering. What is it going to cost for a service, a consultation like this, right? So,
Yeah.
I have a business. We're trying to get to the next level. We've been stuck at $3 million for the last 2 years. We
Yeah.
can't get to that next level. We need to have you come in, take a look, see what's working, what's not. Give us some, give us some advice. Give us an outside look in. What is that going to cost us to to start that process, and what does that process look like?
Yeah, so initially we do a free call for people because we want to make sure that there's actually value we can give to you, right? Like
Right.
I don't want to get
It's
into
got to
something.
be a good fit for
It's
both,
got to be
right?
a good fit for both parties.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to have a bunch of divorces is what I tell
Right.
people, right? Like so once we do that, if we feel that there's value there, we'll do essentially a roadmap to start with, which is we'll document everything. It's all fact based, meaning that at that point, what we are telling you is here's what's wrong, here's what isn't wrong, here's where we need to focus our energy. That, depending upon the size of the company, ranges anywhere from 2,500 to 7,500 as a one-time engagement.
Oh
And
wow.
what you get out of that basically is very clear directions on where you need to focus and implement. Like it is like,
Right.
here is what I have, here's what you need to do. And at that point, they can take that and maybe they want to implement it on their own, or they can choose to engage with us, and we can help build out a model to implement it. There's no
Right.
obligation because it depends on the situation, but we
Yeah.
want people to take away value and not them be hamstrung to like, well, I did this and now I didn't get anything from it
Right.
because now I didn't know what came next, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we start with, and then at that point everything is customized, right? Because it's a function of what
Yeah.
is your
Oh,
situation,
100%.
how
Yeah.
do we solve that, and so forth. So that's
Very
where we
cool. So
start
it's
with.
super affordable. I mean, for really what you're
Yeah,
getting out of it, right? You've got over 20 years of
yeah,
experience doing this.
yep.
Um, I mean, that's invaluable, right? Like
It's a pretty
you're not
reasonable
paying
deal.
for the meeting, you're paying for the 20 years, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty reasonable. I mean, what you get is a pretty reasonable price relative to
Yeah.
what you do, and there's an
100%.
intentionality of that because we don't want that to be the barrier to your success.
Right.
Right? Like I could charge more, but that's not the point in helping people. Like if you
Right.
prevent people from getting into it, then nobody signs up. And
Yeah.
what we want to be able to do is help people. So that
Right.
shouldn't be the reason you don't get help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The more people you can help, for sure, for sure. So, when we first started talking, we were talking about, how most people they work for their business, right?
Yep.
They're not, and that's not why people start a business. You start a business to have a different lifestyle because you want more out of life, you want more freedom, whatever.
Yep.
So once you fix the business side of things, how like what does that process look like to focusing on the family side of things,
Okay.
or the lifestyle side of things?
So, what any experienced business owner will tell you, right, is that to actually run a successful business, you have to hire people who are great at what they do
Oh,
so that
100%.
you don't have to do everything, right?
Yeah.
And then you become essentially the CEO of a company that is inputting and providing feedback on the strategic direction of it, right?
Yep.
Okay. This is exactly what we don't do with our own families. So the problem is that we decide we're going to be the GC for our family and we're going to do all of the subcontracting work as well. Here's the problem. You're not an expert in any of these things. So the reason most people don't have wills or power of attorneys is because they don't like the idea of it. They don't know where to start and they don't know how to hire the person. Right. And if you add that onto basically every other component of your personal financial situation, that's where inactivity comes. So here's what you have is you've now put all this energy into the business. It's being profitable. And now as it flows through to the personal side, it becomes chaos. There's no control. There's no budgeting happening. There's no how do I take advantage of where this money goes. There's no talking about G2, G3. So generation two, generation three. One of the big questions that clients come to me and talk to me about is like, I worked really hard to build this thing. I don't want my kids to become a-holes.
Right.
Right? Like, how do I don't, hopefully that doesn't offend listeners by me saying that, but like,
Should.
but like, there's a real concern that like, there's this
Yeah.
idea that they don't understand what went into this, right? So
Right.
how do we build out a framework for your family that
Right.
addresses all of this, right? And so what we tell people is we become the GC, the general contractor for all of your financial advisors, and you get to step out of that and you get to show up at the beginning and tell us what you're interested in, and you get to show up at the end and sign the paperwork and execute on it. And everything in between we take care of. So you want to save taxes? Great. We'll go find some tax strategies for you. We'll present them to you. You say, I like these. We execute on them. That's your involvement. So the goal is that you're spending 2 hours on average per month on your finances, which is way less than what you're spending right now.
Right.
And you're getting all the things taken care of.
Right.
Right. So like it is in essence, you're building out a C-suite of experts for your family. And by doing that, you're buying back your freedom. And that's what you did on the business side. And that's what you can do on the
100%.
personal side.
Yeah.
Oftentimes what we see is either the stuff doesn't get done or maybe there's one of the spouses who manages this all for the family. And it becomes sort of a full-time job, but they didn't really sign up for that. And maybe they don't want to spend their time. So that removes them from that. And then what they're able to do is they're able to find where they wanted to actually spend their time. And so what I tell people is when the next dollar you make is less important than how you spend the next hour, then those are the conversations we should be having.
Say that one more time.
Yeah. So when the next dollar you make
Yeah.
is less important than how you spend the next hour of your life, then that's where the decision-making process changes. Right.
I like that. Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that the dollar isn't important.
Right.
It's just that the next hour and how you use that time is actually more important to you than making the next dollar.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is the mindset that often happens. And when it does, there's a different conversation that has to happen. That's not the same path anymore. It's not about more. It's about flexibility. And it's about freedom, right? Freedom is the single most important word. And then after that is legacy and stewardship. Those three words are the thing that really a family office is about.
Man, that's great, man. So, you're tackling all sides of life, right? Like the entrepreneur has two things. They have their business and their family, right? The two most important things. If one's running well and the other one isn't, you got a problem, right? You've got constant stress. And I feel like oftentimes we can be, as entrepreneurs, we're either really good at one or the other, right? And it's usually, it's usually a portion of one or the other, right? Most entrepreneurs are not great at all things, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be all things family or all things business, right? So that's great that you guys really focus on both of those things. And now, so do you work on the business first and then the family, I'm assuming, right? It doesn't make sense to do them at the same time
to your point, right? We do work on them with the same time. So our fractional office package, it's one of those things you can't ignore one of the heads.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I guess.
Both have
Yeah,
to
that
be
makes
working.
sense.
And so what I would say is sometimes people come to us where the business is in working order and they need help on the family. Right. Sometimes they come to us where things are good at home, but the business needs it to be able to sort of like help with the family. Right. Sometimes both are in a bit different.
Yeah. Sometimes everything's just chaos and I need help.
I mean, you said it exactly right, which is if you've ever had struggles at work, that always bleeds through to your family.
Yep.
There is no like, because you come home and
Yep.
you are you, and your family feels the stress and the pressure
Yeah.
of that, right?
And
And
it's the
and
same
it
thing.
factors in.
Yeah, it's the same thing. If you got problems at home, it bleeds over onto
Anytime
the
you see a
business.
dip in performance at work, it's usually because something's going on outside of work,
Yep.
right? And
100%.
so we have to tackle both. We have to make sure both are in good working order for either to be successful.
Yep. Absolutely, man. So, um, earlier on, you mentioned a free consultation. So, for
Yeah.
all our viewers and listeners, tell them what you've got for us today.
Yeah. So, like I said, our goal is to make sure that you get a good solution for yourself. So, as opposed to some complicated funnel, there is a part on our website. There's a contact form. You can go there. The website's bradfieldco.com. Input that information. Tell us what you need help with. Tell us what you have questions about. And a real human will respond to you and set up a time for you guys, for us to talk if we think we can help you. If we can't, we'll make a recommendation of where you might be able to go in terms of another possible solution, and explain to you why we don't think we can help you. And it's not
Right.
because we don't like you, but it's just because like we probably aren't the right fit for you.
Yeah.
So we encourage people to do that. Please don't spam us, but it is a real human. But feel free to reach out, and you'll get an actual response on like how you can get some help.
Awesome.
Because that's the thing, is we believe it or not, we do want to help people.
Right. Right. 100%, man. I think there's a lot of businesses out there that do focus on helping people. And those are always the ones that do well, right? There's people out there that are focused on just making money. The fact is, you can make money doing anything. But helping people and making money at the same time, there's nothing sweeter. There is nothing sweeter. The more you help somebody, the better you're gonna feel. But also the longer you're gonna do business with them, right? Like I keep trying to tell, especially the new business owners, I'm like, don't focus on the numbers right now.
Yeah.
Focus on helping someone. Focus on helping people solve problems, and you won't have to worry about all that stuff in the future, right? Just for now,
Yeah.
just focus on helping as many people as you can. And then you worry about the other stuff later on. You can get more organized and you get your processes in place. But at the end of the day, it's all about helping people and helping as many people as you can. Because at the end of the day, the product doesn't matter. If that product solves a problem, that's what really matters.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, my clients are like family. I would
Yep.
say I looked at the other day, 87% of our clients have been with us for 5 years or more.
That's beautiful.
Now, that's pretty good for a service-based business, right? Where you're
100%.
working with businesses that like don't often, you're competing
Absolutely.
about them just staying in business, right? So
Yeah.
we feel really good that like that's our, that like and that's not our retention rate. That's just been who's been with us for 5 years or more. So
Right.
like these have been people that have been in my life for quite a while.
That's great.
And that's, it's hard not to have a bond with people when
Oh,
you're
100%.
around them that long.
Yeah. Yeah. We have clients that we've had for pretty much since the first month we started the business. And yeah, you're absolutely right. They turn into family, right?
They do.
You know them more than some of your friends, right? It's
That's right.
but it's a beautiful thing, right? You get to grow with them. You get to go through the pains together, the struggles together, the wins together. It's it's a great thing. And it turns into a community, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's a great feeling. So,
Yeah.
yeah, totally get you on that. I'll make sure to include the link in the description so you guys can reach out to Nolan, schedule your consultation so you can see if there's a way and how they can help you in your business or in your family or both. So Nolan, I appreciate you hopping on. Some great information, some great insights, and can't wait to do this again soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.